Welcome back. Well, with the midterm elections just one day away, money is, of course, being poured into battleground states, and candidates are making their final pushes. The race is on, of course, to see who gains control of the U.S. Congress. And here to look at key races is Charles Coleman. He's Charles Coleman Jr., I should say. I know we've chatted before about the Texas voter ID law. So why don't we just start there with what are some of the things that might inhibit some certain sects of the population from coming out and getting out the vote?
Well, part of the problem with respect to the Texas voter ID laws is that many of the places that people have to go in Texas in order to get these voter identification cards are located in areas that aren't easily accessible if you live in a rural area. So it's cost prohibitive in many cases, and there's an issue with respect to transportation with people getting there. Some of these stations are not open every day of the week. Some of them are open twice a week. Some of them are open only once a month. And so if you, for example, go and you're told you have to get different identification or different supporting paperwork, you may not be inclined to take the time off from work if you're able to have a job, and if you can't afford the expense to go back, wait in line, or whatever day of the week or whatever day of the month it is.
And I think a lot of people would say that this would disproportionately affect those who are in socioeconomic disenfranchised positions, poor people, those who are medically homebound perhaps and may have trouble getting around, that kind of thing. But we do know that it is a certain kind of person who really kind of needs to come out and vote if Democrats are going to gain any ground here, including women and minorities.
Absolutely. I think that in order for the Democrats to really gain any substantial ground, one of the things that they need to do is especially turn out the female vote. The women population, that's something that is going to be key for Democrats being able to excel. And if they are unable to really capitalize on that and turn out that vote, they're going to have some problems tomorrow.
Well, we know that some of the big issues that have been making headlines around the world, and of course here to rise, are things like ISIS and what's happening in Syria and in Iraq, and Ebola, what's happening in Western Africa and here in the United States. How are those big issues going to play into this midterm election tomorrow?
You know, Francesca, my theory is that more than likely the economy is always going to trump. And so when you look at issues like minimum wage being raised, you have 4 states that have minimum wage propositions on the ballot. That's taking place in South Dakota, Alaska, Nebraska, and Arkansas. And those are all red states. And so I think that that's a clear message that despite what's going on with Ebola, despite what's going on with ISIS, it's very clear the American public is overwhelmingly concerned, very much so, about the economy.
Yeah, the pocketbook really seems to be controlling things right now. Last question for you regarding President Obama. Some Dems haven't really wanted him to come out and help them campaign because they don't really see it much as a help. How is tomorrow's outcome going to affect his last couple of years in office? Could he be a lame duck?
Well, it's very likely that he could, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to change the picture in terms of what we've been seeing across the political landscape. We've had problems, or President Obama has had problems working with Congress regardless, even when he had a majority in the Senate. So even if he ends up as a lame duck, I don't necessarily think that that's going to change how we are seeing what's going on in Washington. You may see some more executive orders with respect to the president trying to do things there, but visually the picture is not going to look much different. It's going to be difficult for the president either way you go.
And really quickly, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is that going to continue to be an issue come tomorrow?
I think it will be, but I think one of the miscalculations that the GOP has made is that they have not still articulated an alternative. They've all been on the bandwagon about saying how the ACA is bad, how they want to repeal the ACA, but they have not really articulated for voters what they'll do if they had the opportunity.
There you go. All right, Charles Coleman Jr., that's all we have time for. Thanks so much for joining us here on Arise News Now.